Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you here today. Sourced out by the Wrestling Observer newsletter, it turns out that after this upcoming next week of Stone Cold Steve Austin podcast on the WWE Network, which is going to have Edge and Christian as a guest, as a tandem, which honestly, in my mind, should be really good. I think most people might know from the What DVD, Stone Cold Steve Austin and Christian are both pretty good friends. I don't know a lot about the on-air, the behind-the-stage sort of friendship of Edge and Stone Cold Steve Austin. But in the What thing, it's pretty much given. The story is that, the thing came from Stone Cold Steve Austin leaving a voicemail on Christian's phone when they were driving down the road one time, where Stone Cold Steve Austin just started saying things, saying what, and then repeating it, and then it ended up being one of the biggest wrestling catchphrases that's still uttered by the fans today. But after that one, it turns out that next month it's going to be Sting. Sting appearing on the Stone Cold Steve Austin show, honestly, is going to be very big for the WWE Network. It's going to be very big for the Stone Cold Steve Austin show. Sting is a guy, he doesn't do a lot of wrestling podcasts. If you think about how many wrestling podcasts there are out there, there's Ric Flair, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Roddy Piper had one until his dying day, Chris Jericho, the Wrestling Observer, Cheap Heat, The Law. I'm trying to think of all of the ones that I listen to. There's tons of wrestling podcasts. There's Jim Ross, there's Taz, Mike Tenay. Just everybody has gotten into the podcast business. Hell, I even forgot the original, The Art of Wrestling with Colt Cabana. And Sting did Jim Ross's podcast 2 years ago around WrestleMania 30, when Sting was the hottest free agent going, when all the rumors were saying that he was coming to WWE and he was going to wrestle at WrestleMania 30, or he was going to become the general manager. And Jim Ross had him on the show, and Sting basically talked about, WWE at this point really had no interest in him, and he thought that his phone would be ringing off the hook, and the phone wasn't ringing at all. Stone Cold Steve Austin interviewing Sting is going to be very good. Of course, you go back to their WCW days. I can't think of any Sting versus Stone Cold Steve Austin match. Well, it wouldn't even been Stone Cold then. It would have been Stunning Steve Austin back in the days. I can't think of any matches, but they have to have at least shared a locker room, or at least had a match somewhere that they could talk about, or maybe just sit around and talk about Brian Pillman stories and the other guys that were in the business. Stone Cold Steve Austin always does a really good job with his show when he interviews people, and I will say, honestly, when he does the live shows for WWE, which he uses on his podcast, those interviews to me, honestly, aren't as good as the ones when he just has people on his regular podcast and, they're not face to face. Maybe sometimes they are, sometimes they're over the computer and he's just trying to catch up. They don't really have an agenda. He doesn't write notes. He doesn't have their Wikipedia page. He didn't ask all of his Twitter followers to send him questions. Maybe he just writes down 2 or 3 things and he says, this is what we're going to lead off with. We're going to see where that gets to. If we reach a dead point, I'll mention this. Then I'll bring up some stories. We'll get to this point, and then basically we'll close out with this. I think that Stone Cold Steve Austin, as far as the guys who were wrestlers, I think that his show, honestly, is one of the best. Week in and week out, I can listen to Stone Cold Steve Austin, take questions from listeners. I can listen to talk to wrestlers. He's talked to musicians, comics. When he comes up pretty soon, he's going to be going to the Hartwell, Georgia to film Redneck Island. He just said he's going to walk up and down the street and basically talk to the people of the city, of this small town in Georgia, talk to them about what it's like to live there every day. I am honestly looking forward to those shows. He did one show with just some guy that was just he wasn't even like he was like a runner, I think they said, and he just happened to be a wrestling fan. He knew who Stone Cold Steve Austin was, and they just shot the shit for an hour. They didn't talk wrestling the whole time. They talked about what this guy did, where he came from, what other shows he'd worked on, and he just is a relatable guy that you can talk to. And believe in what he's saying instead of just trying to make a buck, trying to fill an hour podcast. So I'm looking forward to this one. Hopefully you guys are too. The Stone Cold Steve Austin podcast, as far as the specials, I love it when they do those documentaries, like the Roman Reigns, Booker T, Daniel Bryan, Ultimate Warrior, The Shield was another good one. Those are my favorites, but the sit downs is something that I really do enjoy and I really do rush home. And, if I had to work during Raw, I'll watch the Stone Cold Steve Austin podcast before I catch up with Monday Night Raw and seeing what's going on there. So we'll see what goes on. Staying on the podcast. See you soon.